I am psyched for that because that's what I really wanted. Let's go ahead and just get rid of the old schema. We still need to create this second Apollo. So here I'm just going to copy everything that the init Apollo uses, and we're going to use the same thing, except we do a different URL. So as soon as I said that, I'm like, why don't we just pass in the URL as a parameter? So let's get rid of this. So when we call init Apollo, the first parameter is going to be the URL, or I think we call it the URI, yeah. And so now instead of a single Apollo client, we can cache them based on the URI. So we're going to say let, and we're going to say const Apollo map. So the key is going to be a string, and on the other end it's going to have an Apollo client. So now when we initialize this, we'll just pass it in. Since we're using this in multiple places, let's go ahead and move it to a constant. And that'll probably eventually be a environment variable. All right, so now instead of, well, I think it's fine to have this.apollo client. I don't think we need to initialize. No, let's go ahead and initialize the other one too. Why not? And then I should also initialize it. Do I need to initialize it up here? And then get initial. I don't think so. Unless I should pass it to the context. I'm not sure. Am I rebuilding the Apollo integration with Next.js? So right now I'm not. All I'm doing is I'm adding a second Apollo client to be able to access the GitHub GraphQL. So we're going to have one for the Apollo client for the server and one Apollo client for the GitHub one. So now in my init Apollo, I'm just passing in a variable. Do they use Apollo anywhere else? Down here when they're passing in the Apollo client. And that's, I believe, just so they can create the Pages app so they can pass in the provider right here, I think. All right. Yeah, I haven't used two Apollo instances in an app before either, so we're gonna this is gonna be new ground for me as well. I don't think it should be. It's a little awkward, but I don't think it should be too bad. So now in my repo over here, I think we're gonna have our first query. And then I'm gonna say GitHub Apollo client, export. I'm just trying to decide if I want to. I'm trying to decide, so like what I want to do here is pass in the client and then pass in the GitHub Apollo client, and I'm trying to decide the best way to actually be able to access this Apollo client. Because when we call init, you also want to pass in the initial state, which is going to be the cache. So they're calling this props.apollo state thing. And so they have access to it through this.apollo GitHub client. So what is the best way to pass that in? So they're referencing it in the app like that. So that's why they are passing it here. So for me, why don't I just create... Alright, that's what we're going to do. So instead of this being that, we're just going to make a global scope. This may not be the best way to do it, but I think this will be a way to do it. Actually, let's do or undefined. All right, and we should be assigning this now. Okay, it's just never read. All right, so now I'm going to import it here. I think the last thing is I have not added an authentication header to this. So I'm going to see if this particular request needs one, because this particular request may not. So we're going to log the data. And for now, let's just move all this stuff up here. Comment it out. And then right now I'm just going to hard code the variables, and then assuming this works, then we will add our... Oh, interesting. Oh no, it has it. Assuming this works, we're going to add the route parameters in next. Do I still have that query that I used up? Nah, I'll just do it from memory. I think I said Benawad. No, this is a repo name. Let's grab the stuff from the server. Start it up, and we'll see if this works. So assuming this works and our syntax is right, I saw a red thing here, so let's see what we did wrong. Oh, I made it const, so make it that let. There we go. So if this does not work, I think we need to pass an auth header in. Oh, I know why my thing didn't work before, by the way. It just hit me. Let's close some of these. So I don't need this, don't need this. I didn't form it like this. So you have to say bearer in front of your token. I was not doing that. That's probably why I wasn't authenticating correctly. What? A CORS problem. Because I said include. So what that means is in the init Apollo here, I said includes so I don't know what the best way to, I need to have like add some kind of like ternary. So on this URL, I would like to say includes. On this URL, I do not. Maybe we'll just have link options. Can you do an object to pass in multiple Apollo clients on the app? What do you mean by can you do an object? We're going to assume the user passes in a string for the URI. Well, not assume, we're going to assert or hope. Okay, so now we don't have that. Document is not defined. So I'm going to turn server-side rendering off for a second for this particular component and see if we can get a better error. Yeah, this is what I expected. Cool. So now we're currently unauthorized. So let's authorize ourselves. To do that, we need to get the current user. And maybe we just put this in when we call init Apollo. So this is going to be in the with Apollo client. I'm going to move this up here. So this is where we do get initial props. This is going to get run before every route is rendered. Alright, I'm trying to decide where I want to put this. It's not the browser, they call this. I think I want to put it right here. And the Apollo state here is just going to be an empty object for this. I just realized that the cache is going to be different for this Apollo client. And then the other thing is that Apollo there, we're going to say const, we're going to grab the user. I'm trying to remember where we put it. Maybe pick repo? Yeah. Okay. So me. So if this guy's defined, we're going to say me, I'm going to say access token. Otherwise an empty string. And then get token over here, we call it authorization pass in the header. Alright, let's give it a try. See if we missed anything else. So now we're getting a bad request. That we can debug. So it looks like we authenticate now. Sorry, this might seem like a silly question, but could you access the GitHub API through your own server? That way the client only needs one GraphQL client? Yeah, I probably could. I was thinking about doing that, but then I'm pretty much just, so that's one option, is I could do that. And I think I may be able to set it up where I do like schema stitching. And maybe that's strictly just a better approach from like a developer experience, because then I only have one Apollo client. So I might end up doing this if this gets too messy. The plus is I'm now not hitting my own server every time. Was the access token in the app props in the first login? So what we do is in this pick repo, whenever we log in, we store the access token in the session. And then when I grab the user, this is where I was doing it in the last stream, is that I grab the user, I'm grabbing the access token for that user too, and then I authenticate here. But I think we really want to authenticate for every single route, in which case we should do it in this with Apollo client, because this will happen before everything. So now we should be authenticated before everything, hopefully. That's the goal. Let's see what's wrong with this request. Cannot query repository on type query? What the heck? We literally copied and pasted from this. I mean, we can do this. Let's just type it in. Yes, and that's true too. It'd be easier to cache as well if I just had it on my server. Alright, so this works. And this is what I copy and pasted in. So this seems odd to me. So I messed something up because we're not using the right client. So that would explain that. I'm guessing maybe this is undefined. Okay, so our next problem is this is undefined, so that's a problem. Is there any reason why we can't define this up there so it is defined? All right, we're gonna try this. So I'm gonna just move it to its own file. GitHub Apollo client. If we can't get this to work like semi-easily right here, I think I will just move it to our own backend. Can you pass it as a prop on the app? Yes. Yes, I can. So that's one thing I could do is I could use the, maybe that's what I should do. Let's try that actually. So I can create my own provider. All right, so we have this. We don't care to give it any kind of cache. The only thing we care about is passing in this. Let's pass in me. Let's rename this. I think I want GitHub Apollo client. I think I like it all lowercase like that. And now we can say props.me. All right, so now in our app over here, we have our Apollo provider. So now we can create like a GitHub provider. And this is just using using it from React. So we're going to say const GitHub Apollo client provider. Sorry, this just should be context. I've been saying the word provider. We're going to be using context. Default value is just going to be an object. Oh, there's an article about multiple Apollo clients. Okay, I'll check that out afterwards. Or if this doesn't work, we'll check it out sooner rather than later. So we're going to use this React context, I think. All right, so it's going to be in our app. We're going to say GitHub Apollo context.provider. And the value of this is going to be the GitHub Apollo client. So what I'm going to do is I want to add type safety to it. So I can specify what the type is in the context with angle brackets. And the type of it is this. Now, of course, this doesn't match. We're going to say as any because it's okay. This default thing doesn't match. Do we have to set a default? Yeah, we do. Hi, did you just use a React hook? Nope, I have not used any React hooks yet. All right, so now that we have this provider, we should be able to access it, and I can even use the new syntax. I already forgot it. I saw this and I thought it was really cool. So my context is going to be the GitHub Apollo context. So we're going to say this.context. And this is going to be an Apollo client. Doesn't say. Well, let's just see what happens. I think it worked. I have server-side rendering on. Awesome, it actually worked. Alright, so you may be using a simple heuristic fragment matcher, but your queries contain unions and interface types. Apollo will not be able to accurately map the fragments. Thank you guys. Thank you for your helps. We got there. I think we got there. So we have to introspect the fragment data to be able to do this, which I don't think we have introspected yet. All right, so let's introspect it. Should this be a JSON file? Where did my link go? Yep, so they have it in a JSON file. Cool. All right, so we pass this in when we create the in-memory cache. So let's see if that's going to be a little more complex for us. Where are we creating the in-memory cache? Right here. So again, this gets to the place where we want to pass in options only when we're doing the other thing, only when we're doing the GitHub. So do we want to just add a optional last parameter? Which will be this config, so Apollo reducer config. So I'm going to call this cache config. All right, see you later, man. All right, so this cache option, we're just going to pass when we create the client right here. It's going to be this fragment matcher thing. So we're just taking its suggestion. I've done this before, it's pretty cool. I'm just probably gonna need to restart it, I think. So here's gonna be our fragment matcher, and it looks like I just passed that in as a param. Yeah. We're just going to restart this. I'm guessing it's going to have a problem reading JSON files, maybe. I've never tried Next.js trying to read JSON, so we'll see if that has a problem. Yeah, it looks like it has to do with this. I think it is having a problem. I'm totally fine in importing it like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna log it, and we'll know for sure whether this is getting imported, because this error may be related to something else. Yeah, it looks like this. All right, it looks like it's importing it good. Can I read property types of undefined in the fragment matcher? But the types are right there. I wonder if, yes. So what I did here is we have one too many levels. We don't want this outside data one. That's actually what I got from the GraphQL API as a response. We want to remove that. There we go. Now we have another error. Let's see what this one's about. So I think I know why this could be having a problem. So it's telling me that this get data from tree is an error. And it is. And I think the problem is this get data from tree is using the wrong client. So we need to tell it to use the Apollo client. Ah, yes. I was trying to find out where this was. It's right here. We just need to pass it in like that. Gonna move this up to like right here. So now we should server-side render. Awesome. So notice on the server we are logging the repository. So now the Apollo cache I want to extract. We're gonna have the Apollo state and we're gonna have the GitHub Apollo state. Because what I saw here is check this out. So we have this, it fetched the data and then the data was empty. And the reason for that is because we're not passing the cache. This is getting quite complex. So here we're doing props at Apollo state. We should do props dot. Awesome. That was a tricky little bit there. So now we're able to server-side render this and it works perfectly. And we're sending the auth token for GitHub. Cool. Does anyone have any questions? Was anyone able to follow through what we were just doing? Create Apollo